Okay, I must admit that in this video, this La Ferrari Aperta has nothing to do with what I'm going to cover here, but I thought it was cool anyway, so I am starting this video with it. As you know, I'm kind of a big fan of Ferrari, for whatever that's worth, so let's get into this. I'm going to be talking about my Ferrari class, of course, but specifically, I'm going to be talking about overloading in Python. First of all, let me introduce overloading, the concept, as a object-oriented programming concept, and then I'll talk about it as it relates to Python. Overloading means taking the same name of a function and signature. And what does that mean? That means the name of the function is vroom, but the signature is going to be different. In this case, we're going to say self, and in this case, I'm going to pass in test, which is some attribute that we're passing, right? So this function and this function have the same name, but they have different signatures because we have different parameters, right, that we're passing. So in traditional programming languages, like in Java, to be specific, this and this function are legal and completely valid because when we invoke that function with no parameters versus with one parameter, Java would know at runtime which one to go ahead and use because it knows how many parameters you're passing in. If you're passing one, it would use this one. If you're passing none, it would use this one. However, this is not the case in Python. This you could not do. Why? Because in Python, we don't have overloading. This concept, we do not have this overloading concept as I am showing it right here. So if I run this and I tell you that, for example, I could say, just to make sure I don't have any issues, I can say test equals test as a default. And here when I say vroom, I'm not passing anything. So which one is it going to run? Is it going to run this one that has a default parameter? Or is it going to run this one that doesn't have any? Well, I'm not sure. Let's find out. In this case, we know that it's in a run. Actually, we're not sure here. Vroom with my Ferrari, let's just call it here. This is going to be 1 and this is going to be 2. If we run this now, what happens now? We'll see that the one that gets ran is always going to be what's loaded into memory, right? That's what I wanted to show. The last one loaded into memory is the one that's going to be invoked. So what happens if I pass in something here? If I pass in something like real test and I run this, we see that no matter what happens, we're still going to be loading, invoking the second one because that's the second one. That's the last vroom that was loaded into memory. So this overloading concept we don't really have. We don't have a way to run this one sometimes and run this one some other times. As far as Python's concerned, we don't we cannot differentiate that. So overloading in Python, it's not the same as in other languages. What do we have instead? Well, we do have something like this where we can say, hey, look, we can overload this method, if you will, if we pass in test here and we say something like test1. In the case that we don't have test1, well, it's going to do this, like this, as regular, as normal, as it would. And if we did have it, of course it would go ahead and enter it. And so if we had more parameters, same thing. We can do like test2, pass in test2, something along these lines. And if we have it, it'll pass it. If we don't have it, we won't pass it. So that's the way that overloading is meant to be, or how we can make it work for us in Python. And I hope that makes sense.